Now, the passenger plane Airbus A320-214 of the US Airways is getting ready to perform a scheduled domestic flight AWE 1549 on the route New York, Charlotte, Seattle. On board the aircraft, 155 people are boarding, 150 passengers and 5 crew members, and the plane is prepared to be piloted by a highly experienced crew. The captain is 57-year-old Chesley B. Sullenberger with a total of 19,663 flight hours. As a military pilot, he flew the F-4 Phantom II fighter, and as a civilian pilot, he operated aircraft such as the Boeing 737, McDonnell Douglas DC-9, BAE 146, and Airbus A320. The second pilot is 49-year-old Jeffrey B. Skiles, also an experienced pilot with 15,643 flight hours in his career. In the cabin of the aircraft, 3 flight attendants were working: 57-year-old Sheila Dale, 58-year-old Doran Welsh, 51-year-old Donna Dent. At this time, the weather at LaGuardia Airport was normal. Visibility 16 km, broken clouds with a lower limit of 1,100 meters, surface wind at 4 menes with a heading of 290.
Cactus 1549, ready for takeoff.
Cactus 1549, cleared for takeoff.
At 1524, the dispatcher grants permission for our crew to take off, and the Airbus A320 lifts off from runway 4 at LaGuardia Airport, heading towards Charlotte. The aircraft begins to climb, and both pilots and passengers witness a beautiful view of the Hudson River unfolding.
Look at the Hudson, Skiles. Sully, what's that? Birds? Those are birds. Birds in the engine.
90 seconds after takeoff, the cockpit voice recorder captures the captain's remark about bird strikes. A second later, sounds of impacts and the rapid loss of sound from both engines are recorded. At this point, the aircraft has only managed to reach an altitude of 975 meters. Canadian geese, having entered both engines, immediately ignited them, causing a sharp decrease in thrust. Inside the cabin, silence ensues, accompanied by the smell of fuel. Realizing that both engines have failed, Captain Sullenberger takes control while the first officer, Skiles, initiates the engine restart procedure. The aircraft begins to decelerate, still gaining altitude for some time, reaching a height of about 930 meters at a speed of 343 km/h. However, it then starts a gliding descent, accelerating to 390 km/h, while the altitude drops to 500 meters.
Cactus 1549, turn left heading 270.
This is Cactus 1549. We've hit birds, lost thrust in both engines. We're turning back to LaGuardia.
All right, you need to return to LaGuardia. Turn left heading 220.
Heading 220, understood.
Control tower, suspend all flights. We have an emergency return. Cactus 1549, bird strike. We've lost both engines. Returning immediately.
At 1527, Captain Sullenberger contacts the dispatcher and reports the emergency situation. In response, Air Traffic Controller Patrick Harton orders LaGuardia Tower to halt all departures and directs Sullenberger back to runway 13. However, Captain Sully responds that landing is impossible. Drawing on his experience, Captain Sullenberger quickly calculates and realizes that returning to LaGuardia may end in disaster. He requests alternative landing options from the dispatcher.
Cactus 1549, runway 4 is available.
I'm not sure if we can make it back. What's on our right side? Anything in New Jersey? Maybe Teterboro?
Yes, all right. Teterboro Airport is to your right. Are you going to attempt to land at Teterboro?
Yes.
Sullenberger asks the dispatcher to provide landing options in New Jersey, specifically mentioning Teterboro. The dispatcher grants permission to approach and land on runway 1 at Teterboro Airport. Initially, Captain Sullenberger agrees, but after further calculations, he realizes that this option is also unfeasible.
Cactus 1549, heading 280. Land on runway 1 at Teterboro.
We can't make it to Teterboro.
All right. Which runway do you want to land on at Teterboro?
We'll be landing on the Hudson.
Say again, Cactus.
The plane is currently flying over the Hudson, passing the George Washington Bridge. Captain Sullenberger announces over the loudspeaker,
"Brace for impact."
Meanwhile, the flight attendants are preparing passengers for the water landing. At the same time, Air Traffic Controller Patrick Harton contacts the Coast Guard, requesting them to alert all vessels in the Hudson River and instruct them to prepare for a rescue operation. 7 minutes after takeoff, the Airbus A320 executed an emergency water landing on the Hudson River. Following the landing, the crew announced an evacuation. Captain Sullenberger opened the cockpit door and gave the order to evacuate. The crew initiated the evacuation of passengers through the 4 exits from the wing windows to the inflatable rafts deployed from the front passenger doors. The evacuation was complicated when someone opened the rear left door, causing more water to enter the aircraft. Whether it was a flight attendant or a passenger remains disputed. Captain Sullenberger circled the cabin twice to ensure that all passengers were evacuated, then became the last to leave the sinking plane. The air temperature was 7 degrees Celsius and the water temperature was 5 degrees Celsius. Some evacuees awaited assistance knee-deep in the water on partially flooded rafts. Some were in life jackets. Others stood on the wings or, fearing an explosion, swam away from the plane. One passenger, aiding in the evacuation, found the wing so crowded that he jumped into the river and swam to a boat. 2 NY waterway ferries arrived within minutes and began picking up people. Many other boats, including those from the US Coast Guard, quickly arrived at the scene. Captain Sullenberger advised ferry crews to rescue those on the wings first, as they were in greater danger than those on the rafts, which had detached and transformed into lifeboats. Approximately 140 New York firefighters arrived at nearby docks. Additionally, police helicopters, various boats, divers, and other rescuers provided medical assistance on the riverbank, where most passengers were transported. At the time of the water landing, 78 passengers sustained injuries of various degrees, none life-threatening. Almost all suffered from hypothermia. The most severe injury was sustained by flight attendant Doran Welsh, deep leg wound. 24 passengers and 2 rescuers were hospitalized, but most were released the same day. Another passenger suffered eye injuries from spilled aviation fuel in the water and had to wear glasses. Investigation into the crash of flight AW1549 was conducted by the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB. The final NTSB investigation report was published on May 4, 2010. During the hearings, pilots Sullenberger and Skiles were criticized with potential criminal charges for allegedly being able to land the plane at the departure airport or other nearby airports, Teterboro and Newark, instead of landing on the Hudson River. As evidence, the NTSB presented simulator data where the same situation was simulated, and in all cases, expert pilots managed to land the aircraft at LaGuardia, Teterboro, and Newark. In their defense, the pilots stated that they were given about 5 seconds to make decisions in the simulator modeling. They emphasized that they were prepared for bird strikes and the failure of both engines. However, the simulation did not account for the human factor and the actual decision-making time, which took about 35 seconds, as confirmed by the cockpit voice recorder data. After this, the NTSB decided to incorporate the actual decision-making time from the cockpit voice recorder into the flight simulation model. Following this adjustment, none of the simulator pilots could successfully land the plane on the nearest runway. After reviewing all possible solutions in this simulation, all accusations against the pilots were dropped. Ultimately, investigators concluded that the main cause of the crash was Canadian geese, whose weight exceeded what the engines could withstand at the moment of impact. This led to engine failure and loss of thrust, resulting in the water landing. After the accident, all passengers received compensation of $5,000 for lost luggage, and those who could prove a larger loss received additional compensation. Passengers on board during the crash received an additional $10,000 for waiving further claims against US Airways. Following the evacuation, the aircraft was towed to a dock near the World Financial Center, approximately 6 kilometers from the water landing site, and later lifted. After the investigation concluded, The aircraft was acquired by the Carolinas Aviation Museum in Charlotte and became a significant exhibit, reminding visitors of the real miracle on the Hudson. It's great when everything has a happy ending. All 155 people returned alive to their families, forever remembering this flight. But most of all, they will remember Captain Sullenberger and the entire crew. Thanks to their actions and coordinated work, everyone was saved. As one of my subscribers recently wrote, "There are pilots from God, and there are, God forbid." This phrase accurately describes our hero today, Captain Sullenberger, a person born to fly. Even as a 16-year-old teenager, Sully, with his father's approval, took paid flying lessons from an agricultural aviation instructor, driven by a huge desire to become a pilot. He then entered the United States Air Force Academy, where he flew various jet fighters. Only after that did he enter civilian aviation, dedicating 29 years and accumulating almost 20,000 flight hours. On January 15, 2009, fate prepared an exam for Captain Sullenberger, where he had to apply all his experience to save everyone on board the A320. The captain and the second pilot worked as a single organism, acting cohesively, assessing the situation, and making the right decisions. Thank you, Captain Sullenberger. Friends, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to share your emotions in the comments. If you like this story, be sure to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already.